I'm on Star. Okido, I think we're going to start soon. Thank you very much for tuning in. I'm literally in the middle of nowhere right now with Starlink on top of my car and with alternative power because basically what happens is that Weather Canada, you know, the guys who modify the weather to piss us off, they said that it's going to rain like crazy today. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to run the batteries. I'm going to run everything in parallel. I'm going to run the batteries, run the start everything off the grid. So we might lose, if we lose power, we might lose the lights, the AC, but the stream and the audio will work, which is kind of cool. Well, anyways, thanks for tuning in. I'd like to remind you guys that will be tomorrow in Claresholm. The folks from APP, they're going to organize a town hall meeting over there in Claresholm. They're going to bring John Carpe as well as Chris Sim. They're going to talk about how the feds are trying to screw us over again. And that's going to be on John Carpe. He's going to talk about the regular bills that are passing in Ottawa right now. As well as, and this is the Chris Sims part, she is with the director, the Alberta director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. She's going to talk about the MOU and Brookfield and all things Brookfield. That's going to be tomorrow at 7. Thursday, I'll be in Foremost, and we're going to talk about laws, bills. They're going to bring Tanner Day from all the way from Lloyd. And they're going to bring the Paynes, which is LaVar Payne, as well as Scott Payne. They're going to talk about legislation and that kind of stuff. And they're also going to bring a fellow of the name of Arthur. And Arthur has worked in China before. And he has worked in China for 10 years. He was going back and forth between Canada and China. And what he said is basically that China and the communist regime in China are taking over Canada, and we have to leave right now. So that's another story. So very interesting thing. Looking forward to see that, and thanks for tuning in. I think they're going to start soon. I think so. Anyways. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're doing fantastic today. So this is the 2-minute warning, guys. So if you want to grab something, grab some merch, explore the nature outside, take a smoke, go to the washroom. By the way, washrooms are right here on my side here. Not here, over there. Over here is just a jacuzzi and some battery packs for my kid. Anyways. I don't know, but it smells like, I don't know, chlorine or something. It smells like climate change. And yesterday I was doing some climate change, doing making myself a barbecue, which is great. All good climate change. Anyhow, thanks for having me here.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a Let's Talk Alberta event here just outside of beautiful Killam. My name is Shane Meikle, and I will be emceeing tonight. Sometimes I speak. I thought Ben was late enough I was going to end up having to speak tonight. First, we'll do a couple of housekeeping things. As Max mentioned, the bathrooms are right there, and the emergency exits, the emergency exit is back there, or I think if you pull down up on the chain, you could roll it up and get out that way. We're going to have 3 speakers tonight. We're going to start with John Riel, then we'll go to Ben Trudeau, and finish off with Mr. Chris Scott. We ask that you keep your questions till after their speeches, because then we'll have a break, and then we'll have a full question and answer period afterwards. And please get your tough questions ready. They'd love for you to try and stump them. I don't think I've seen them stumped yet, but you never know. Could be the first time. Our very first speaker is Mr. John Riel. He's been in politics for about 50 years or so. No, maybe make that 80. I think he was born into politics. So, without further ado, here's Mr. John Riel.
I may look it, but I'm not that old. Actually, I'll give you a little more information about me. Way back when, in another life, 25 or 30 years ago, there was a political party in Alberta called Alberta First. Does anybody remember that? Some of you are old enough to remember it. What you might not know about that party is that I was the founding president of that party and the first leader of it. So I say that, this was in late 90s, early 2000s. I say that not to pat myself in the back for being politically involved. I say it because our position at that time was that the federal government should get the heck out of our business and let us do our thing in Alberta in accordance with the Constitution. It wasn't a separatist party. It was a party that effectively said the same thing that Danielle Smith is saying now, which is we wanted a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. Then this was 25, 30 years ago. I would ask you, what's changed? Nothing. Things are worse now than they were then. So Normally, I've been speaking in the Let's Talk Alberta circuit now for close to a year, or from APP to Let's Talk Alberta and other involvement that I've had, and I and my wife have had over the past several months. And my attitude has changed a little bit. I am now fully convinced, as Chris Scott is, that the independence of Alberta is inevitable. Now, that doesn't mean I believe it's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 weeks. As a matter of fact, I'm a heck of a lot closer to 80 than I am to 75, and I rather doubt that I'll live to see it, but my grandchildren and great-grandchildren probably will. So that's why I'm here. I'm here because they need to know that there's a future. We can talk about the economics of Canada for a couple of minutes if you'd like. Just an observation. How many of you realize that the auto industry in Ontario is more than 50% off what it was last year? Did you know that? There's more than 50% reduction in the auto industry. And that same type of percentage follows through all of Ontario's industry. Another interesting fact that you may or may not know, that 47% of Canada's unemployed are in Ontario. That's 47% of all the unemployed in the entire country are in Ontario. Now let's talk about the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford. And let's look at his avid, wonderful support for a new pipeline all the way from Alberta into Ontario to the Ontario refineries. Now let's have a look at the deal that Prime Minister Carney has made with our money to British Columbia. He has said to BC, no problem, we'll just run another pipeline along a TMX right away, and we'll let you dip into Alberta's royalties and get paid for it. So now you kind of might understand why Ontario all of a sudden is, gee, let's build a pipeline from Alberta to Ontario, because the precedent has been set. Now the federal government can step in and negotiate with Ontario to collect more of Alberta's royalties. So he's being very generous with our money. The other thing I'd like to point out, and I'm speaking off the cuff, I have no prepared comments for tonight. So this is random, and at my age, it can be very, very random. I may not be able to string the things together, but hopefully you'll be able to sort it out. Right now in Canada, there's 10 provinces, and I don't know, have they made any new territories lately? But at least 3 territories, maybe 4, I don't know how many there are now. And all of the other provinces of Canada, with the exception of Alberta, are in a recession. Canada's in a recession. The only province in Canada that is not in a recession is Alberta. So let's look at a scenario whereby we get another pipeline, we get to sell some oil to international customers. Anybody here ever heard of a windfall tax? What a windfall tax is somebody in the government looking at income that all of a sudden is appearing out of nowhere and saying, hey, that's a windfall. They're not really entitled to that. Let's us grab a portion of that. So if we get these new pipelines, we'll have more revenue coming into Canada, and all of a sudden we may be, and I think we probably will be, subject to a windfall tax. So it's really interesting when you look at these things. We've lost over $1 trillion of investment over the last 10 to 15 years. Right now, 40% of the wage earners in the top 1% of wage earners in Canada have left the country. Most of them have gone to the US. The qualified tradespeople are leaving. Anybody familiar with the concept of rats leaving a sinking ship? Canada is in real trouble. So I propose that we rescue Canada. And the way we rescue Canada is we leave. We take the 21 to 26% of the annual budgets of the maritime provinces that are supplied by equalization, where 7 out of the 10 provinces rely on the other 3 for support, and of those other 3, only 1 really contributes a lot of money, which is Alberta. We leave, and that 21 to 26% that the Maritimes rely on disappears because we disappear. Quebec is much better than the Maritimes. They don't take 20+ plus percent of their annual budget in equalization. They only take 8.7% of their budget in equalization. But that 8.7% is $13.5 billion a year. It comes from federal taxes. Where do the federal taxes come from? Raise your hand, anybody here that pays federal tax? Anybody? Anybody pay federal tax? By golly, look at all of you. So the way we rescue, I used to tell a story, I'm not going to go into it because I don't have time, but I used to tell a story that involved a brother-in-law in my basement or in somebody's basement. And what it is brother-in-law came and said, my wife has left me, my dog left me, I don't have a horse anymore, they're foreclosing on my house, I don't have a job, they fired me, can I stay with you for a little while? And we say, sure, because you're our family, we'll look after you. So we let him come and stay in our basement. And one day we get up to make breakfast and there's no bacon and there's no eggs in the fridge. And we look at the pantry and there's nothing there. There's no cereal, there's no milk for it. Turns out brother-in-law had a midnight snack. So we go downstairs to look at brother-in-law and he's sitting there with his feet up on the couch in the basement suite playing video games. And we realize that he came over 5.5 years ago for a couple of weeks while he got back at his feet. You're going to kick your brother-in-law out. That's my proposal for the rest of Canada. I love Canada. I'm a former airman, member of the RCAF. I'm a former soldier. I was a commissioned member of the Army as a signals officer. I love Canada. I want to save it. And the way we save it is we leave. Now, as far as the economics are concerned, do you know that Alberta would have more land area than almost 80% of the rest of the nations in the world? Did you know that? Jason Kenney referred to the possibility of Alberta becoming an independent country by referring to us as a statelet, just a tiny little state, a statelet. We have more land than almost 80% of the rest of the countries in the world. Did you know that we have more farmland than 90% of the nations of the world? We have minerals, we have mines, we have forestry, we have gas, we have rare earth minerals. We have the potential to be the wealthiest country in the world. But we are policy locked by Ottawa. The only way that we can take advantage of all those resources is to do it ourselves. Now, having said that, we need to be the masters of our own destiny. And the only way to do that is to assert that authority without reference to getting on our knees and pleading with Ottawa. Now, I want to talk for a couple of seconds about Danielle Smith. I like Danielle Smith. I think given her circumstances, she's done the best that she can in many ways. But there's one way where I feel that she's fallen flat on her face. She says that she wants a sovereign Canada or a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada. What that means in real English is she wants the federal government to obey the Constitution and for Alberta to obey the Constitution, which is the same dang thing we wanted 30 years ago. So my question to Premier Smith is this: why in heaven's name haven't you done it? There is nothing stopping her from saying, okay, off we go to an Alberta pension plan. We can do that. There's nothing stopping her from canceling the RCMP contract. You know, nationwide in Canada right now, the RCMP are 3,400 members down from their stated manpower. 3,400. There are places in Alberta where more than half of the detachments aren't there. We don't see that in our bill. We still pay the bill, plus the fact that if they're down by 50%, there's a whole bunch of overtime being made, so it's costing us a fortune. So by getting rid of the RCMP, replacing it with an Alberta police force, we not only save money on the number of personnel, but we also save money on overtime. It would be tremendously advantageous for us to have our own police force, as well as being assured that that police force would be accountable to us and not to Ottawa. Now, the other thing I'd like to point out is that I didn't used to be angry. I now am. I'm angry. I'm not ranting and raving angry, but I'm angry that all of the things, and you'll find out more from my friend Ben Trudeau about what our Premier could do if she had a mind to. All of the things that she could be doing in order to assert our constitutional authorities and obligations, she's not doing. She goes to Ottawa gets down in front of Carney, gets on one knee, kisses the ring, and says, may we please have a pipeline? Will you please give us this? Will you please give us that? How about taking a page out of Quebec's book and saying, this is ours, take off? Wouldn't that work better? And the thing about it is she can do it. She has the legal and constitutional authority to do that. So I'm angry with the UCP government. And I'm a little bit frustrated when Chris talks, he talks about the possibility of the next election coming up, and the UCP government saying, well, you've got to vote for us in spite of what's happening with this independence movement, because if you don't, the NDP will win. I would turn that around and say, if you don't get off your butt and do what you're able to do under the Constitution of Canada and the rules and laws of the country, then you're responsible for the NDP if they happen to win, because we are not going to stand for what's going on now to continue. It's just not going to happen. So I love Canada. I put my name on the dotted line twice, once in the RCF and once in the Canadian Army. I love it. I want to save Canada. And the way we save Canada, as I said before, is we leave. I'm only supposed to speak for a couple of minutes here, and I'm probably over time. Am I over time? I must be. But I'm going to close now with a couple of comments. Those comments are this. They say that we're too small. We only have 5 million people. Do you know that that's a larger population than a third of the rest of the nations in the world? We're bigger than 8 out of 10 countries in the world. We have a larger population than a third of the countries of the world. We have lots of people, lots of land, and lots of resources. People also say you're landlocked in BC, and if you're independent, you won't be able to get any access to BC. Well, I'll tell you what. I think it's $79 billion that BC transits through Alberta to the rest of Canada from the ports in Vancouver and Prince Rupert. You don't want our oil? Fine. We'll put a little roadblock on both the rails and Highway 16 and the Yellowhead. And you can pay us for access to Canada. I've had people tell me that, hey, you know, if you decide to be independent, Canada won't trade with you. Well, 88% of our trade is south. We don't care if Canada doesn't trade with us. Doesn't bother us, because our primary trading customers are south, not east and west. We would be strong, we'd be powerful, and we would be the masters of our own destiny, and we would have a GDP that's larger than almost every other country in the world. I'll close with one more little stat. Norway has a permanent fund of, I don't know, over $1 trillion. We have a savings account in Alberta of a couple $100 million. We have more oil than they do. Where's our money? Why don't we have it? Well, that's part of it. I won't even talk about Brookfield because I could be here all night. But I will say this. Our current Prime Minister, in my opinion, and this is an opinion, so nobody can assume me over it, I think that Mark Carney is a crook. I think he makes my last dog's hind leg look like a straitjacket. I mean, he's a crook. In my opinion, I have no proof of that. I just think he is. Anybody agree with me? I'm done, and I am angry, and I do love Canada, and I do want to save Canada, and you understand why I want to save Canada, because I'm a former soldier. The other thing that comes up, and I'm rambling here, but that's because I don't have a prepared talk. People say, you're disrespecting our veterans who fought for Canada. I got news for you. My dad fought in the Second World War. My grandfathers fought in the First World War. They didn't fight for Canada. They fought for what we expect to have in Canada, which is freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom to criticize the government, and freedom to exercise property rights and do our own thing. That's what they died for. They didn't die for Canada. They died for those things. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry for ranting and raving, but like I said, I'm too close to 80 not to say what I believe anymore. And if they want to throw me in jail, come on, I could use 3 meals a day. But in the meantime, I will say what I believe, and I will say it strongly, and I will say it loudly, and I will say it often. Now, the next person we have here is my good friend, Benoit Trudeau. And I don't want you to confuse him with Pierre Elliott or with Justin. It's the same family, but a different branch. This man is a transplant from Quebec. He's a dyed-in-the-wool Albertan. And he knows that the exercise of sovereignty within Canada can be done. All it takes, can I use the word? All it takes is balls. Courage. That's what I So, ladies and gentlemen, Benoit Trudeau.
Thank you. For those who don't know me or first time they hear about me, you don't have to clap because my name is Trudeau and I won't let any Albertan clap for Trudeau unless I have a reason for. I'm from the... before the question arise, yes, I'm related 14 generations back. So in the family tree, we reach each other, the infamous branch of Trudeau and my branch of Trudeau to 1648 with the construction of Montreal by a contractor who changed his name from Trudeau to Trudeau, not to make sure that his family would not know that he just married a whore in Montreal, which were the ladies of the filles du roi, the ladies of the king. They were emptying jails in Paris, sending them to New France, and then these gals were trained by nuns and then married single guys that were working to build what is now today Montreal. So I come from a very political family, not because of my name, because of my dad's job. So dad is a speechwriter, PR guy, worked for all premiers of Quebec since the 70s at least. He was editor of the Montreal University Journal in October 1970 when his office was raided by the Canadian Army, who invaded Montreal with 12,000 soldiers, just 2,000 less than on D-Day, with tanks at the corner of the streets, and arrested 435 freedom lovers in Quebec that have protested against the Liberal government of the time. At 4 a.m., Trudeau Sr. called for the war measure to be taken over Quebec because of the murder of Pierre Laporte, Quebec minister, and the abduction of Crow, not the ambassador, but the consul of England in Montreal. And the Liberal government used that the same way as Trudeau Jr. used a false accusation in Coutts to call for extreme measure to squash dissent. So, know what? On October 19, I'm not a big fan of that referendum, the way it's been shaped and the way it's been given, but it's our duty to go. Because in Quebec, since 1759, more than 500 Quebecers died for the right to ask for sovereignty. In 1838, 12 of the leaders of the movement were all hung in Montreal because they wanted to protest against the English regime. And 100 were deported in Australia. And then the English from there on decided to render the Quebecer poor. So by 1900, the life expectancy of a French Canadian in Montreal, in Griffintown, an industrial area of Montreal, was 19 years old. And if you were French, you could not have a bank loan. Bank would not lend to French Canadian. So what did the French Canadian did? They started their own bank. It's called a credit union. It's called Desjardins. It's now the largest credit union in North America. Probably a lot of you have car insurance from them. Desjardins has 7.8 million members out of 9 million Quebecers. Desjardins is the largest financial institution in North America owned by their own people, the largest cooperative. I was raised in that environment. I mean, this is my fourth referendum on constitutional issues since I'm born. The first one, I was 8 years old, 1980. I remember my dad working hard for it. I don't remember myself. But the second one was the one of Charlottetown, which I was very involved. I was 20 years old, and I was for the no. I got involved in politics. I was 14, and the leader of our party was premier at the time, voted against the youth wing of the party on our position, on our constitutional position. I have the same position today as I had when I was 14 years old. I believe that if every province act according to what the Constitution enables us to do, that would not be there today. I put the blame of where Alberta is today a lot on the courage of our own politician and the laziness of taking over what is ours to take. I wrote that book where I go on the first section of the book about the history of Canada, constitutional history of Canada. How did we came here? I've been myself in Alberta since moved here in 2008. I met my wife in Edmonton, born and raised in Montagnan in 2011. We have 4 kids, all born and raised in Alberta. I was never raised to be a Canadian ever in my life. I was a Quebecer, and then I became an Albertan. So I am definitely an Albertan. It's written in my glasses. I am Albertan there. And when I saw the lack or the political culture in this province, I was so encouraged when a group just resist to a politician that broke his promises within 24 hours, Jason Kenney, and imposed vaccine mandate, that I joined that group. I said, this guy needs to go. That was my re-implication in politics in this province. After that, during that round, I met with Danielle Smith, and I worked with her in her leadership campaign to become premier. Once she became premier, me and a business partner, we started a lobby group to lobby for Alberta sovereignty, to make Alberta more sovereign, to stop accepting that we're producing 75% of the beef of Canada, and we let it culled by 2 companies, JBS and Cargill, at 87%. We have the largest oil reserve, all owned by 5 companies. These 5 companies have 78% ownership, foreign ownership. So Albertans are good to let stuff go to others. We need to learn how to handle the stuff for ourselves, how to be sovereign on their own stuff. Like the Canadian pension plan, after 60 years, have an investment fund of 700 billion with a B for 22 million insured. Quebec decided never to partake in that in 1965. They created their own. Well, the Quebec pension plan today has 500 billion for 6 million insured. So it has been 3 times more performant than the Canada pension plan. You know that Quebec pensioners own more real estate in this province, Alberta, than Albertans themselves. They are the owner of the Cross Iron Mill in Calgary. This is the Quebec pension plan. The outlet at the airport, this is the Quebec pension plan. Southgate Mall in Edmonton, the Quebec pension plan. So Quebec owns for 70 billion of real estate. Their pension plan, why? Because they put as a rule that 30% of all the pension plan has to be reinvested in Quebec and or Canada. So they create that powerhouse. So if you look today for a regular Quebecer, he has an account at Caisse Desjardins, and he has a Quebec pension plan. When you put Caisse Desjardins and the pension plan together of Quebec, it's $1.2 trillion that they control in the economy. And this is why they don't even talk about equalization. It's not a subject in Quebec. Nobody knows that they receive money from Canada. It's a non-issue. You know why? Because in 97, 98, we created a committee at the time. So at the 95 referendum, by the way, I was very involved. The question was written on my computer the first time because I was part of a new party named the ADQ, and we earned 7% of the public vote at the 94 election. And when Parizeau became premier, contrary to this country, to this province political culture, in Quebec, when you are the leader of a political party, you do what your party wants first, and then the rest after. Here in Alberta, we've been conservative for so long that the culture at the Premier's office is that we have to rule for all Albertans. I'm telling you, in the Westminster system, when you rule for all, you rule for no one. Because then you will rule by poll. And then you won't do what your members of your party, of your private club, which is the way the Westminster system works, elect you to do. So in 95, I was involved in that campaign because they were missing 7% to win the yes. The 7% was us. I was 22 years old. I'd been candidate. Our leader was 24. He's been elected in his riding. The question that was asked that became the judge in 98 by the Supreme Court, and that became the Clarity Act, is the question that we made, that we push in 95. So I will tell you what the Clarity Act is. The Clarity Act is 7 traps to make sure that no province will be able to separate. It's 7 gates preventing separation. So when we go and vote in October 19 to start the process according to our rules, we actually start the process to make sure that we're going to go through these 7 gates, which makes almost impossible. So what's the solution? This is what I brought in that book. So second section of that book, I bring what is Quebec's doing? How come Quebec has so much privilege? I will tell you why. Because they took them according to the Constitution, not because of their 9 million people, because they have the right according to our Constitution. Quebec has 38 embassies across the world. When you're in Washington, when you're in Paris, when you're in Tokyo, when you're in London, you don't go to the Canadian embassy if you're Quebecer. You go to the Maison du Québec. They have 38 offices internationally. They deal all of their economic stuff by themselves. And then when they're ready, because the only thing they don't have, the province don't have to do is to enter into treaty, but they negotiate all their stuff, and then when they're ready to sign the treaty, then they call Ottawa and say, hey, come and sign the paper. And what do you think that Ottawa do? They do it because it's constitutional. Quebec has been collecting its own tax since 1957. This is why the equalization has been put together. Because when Quebec started collecting its taxes, they went through the process of collecting 2 years of double taxes just to protest against Ottawa. Because Ottawa said, okay, well, we keep on collecting our taxes, and Quebec said, okay, keep on collecting yours, but we're collecting yours. And then they made a campaign to make sure that all Quebecers knew that Ottawa, they were the one that pissing them off for their taxes. So Ottawa stopped collecting taxes for Quebec and create the equalization, because if you're collecting your taxes, well, then you're going to share with everybody. Of course, sure, go ahead. So talking about equalization, so after that book, it's a bit of a thick book. 1/3 of it is mostly research, but I know that's a bit thick to read. So what I've done, because I'm spend my time studying and stuff like that. Plus, what brought me to Alberta is politics. I was working for the first Harper government. I was in charge of Canada economic development for the region of Quebec, spreading 4.3 billion grants to Quebec businesses and projects. So the manufacturing industry in Quebec will die slower with the Chinese competition. So this is what brought me to Alberta, because Prime Minister Harper asked us during cabinet meeting, hey guys, we spread like $2 billion to Quebec businesses, and only 7% comes back in goods to Alberta. And Alberta is booming. So my minister turns to me and says, okay, Ben, you're going to go to Alberta and find a way to create some link. And I didn't know what to start, so I called the Premier's office, who had Stelmach at the time, and I booked myself a breakfast with Mr. Stelmach. So that's how I came to Alberta. And that morning that I came to Alberta, I had to resign because I had a big enemy at the Prime Minister's office, who was the son of the mafia boss of the Greek in Montreal, a real killer. And he didn't like me, I didn't like him, and I refused to give money to some company that he wanted me to give money to. And anyway, he found a way to get me out. So that morning, my first day in Alberta, I approached the Premier's car, introducing myself and telling him that we had to cancel the meeting because I had to resign that same morning. And he started laughing and said, well, that's politics. I still need to have breakfast. So that's how I was introduced to the Albertan way of thinking. And then during that breakfast, he said, you know what, if you want to move in that province, I know a few people. No, So I did, and I never regret it. By the way, I will never go back to Quebec. But I like the way, and I think politically, the Westminster system, I think like a Quebecer. And how a Quebecer think is do first, apologize never. Okay? How a Quebecer think is when the Supreme Court pass a law and say your law is unlawful, you have to change it, you have to remove it. We look at the Supreme Court, look at the judgment. Okay, we'll change that sentence and put back the law in place. We're at the 5th round for the law on French language in Quebec. 4 judgments, Supreme Court against that law since 1976, and it's still there. Know how Quebecers think? They think, you know what? I believe that we can rule by ourselves, so I don't believe that our MLA should pledge allegiance to the Queen. So we pass a law that say we don't pledge allegiance to the Queen or the Queen to the Crown anymore. And then what does Ottawa do? Nothing. So the next step is say, you know what, guys? So we really dislike royal assent. I think it's ridiculous. So from now on, the Lieutenant Governor is a clerk. He will report to you, and you will, by the way, you will pay him because we don't want to pay for your clerk. And then you go and put what they've done, you put a for sale sign in front of his house. This is how a Quebecer think, no? And I believe that Albertans think like that as well. I believe that the political class of Alberta doesn't know how to put in practice. So what I've done some books here, smaller books. So I took a lot of subject in there and did way smaller book that I call with a French name called Plaquette, just because I think it sounds great. And Plaquette in French means a little book that talk about one subject and kill one horse at a time. And so my first one is on equalization. And what I've done here is say, instead of screaming about equalization, why don't we shield ourselves the way Quebec shield itself? Quebec shield themselves from 3.5 billion. So there's 3.5 million that they received that they shouldn't because they shielded themselves. So I said, okay, Quebec shield themselves for 3.6 million. Here, how we shield ourselves for 3.6 billion as well, because we live under the same rule. Then the Canada Pension Plan. I say, you know what? You know why people are afraid of the APP? Because nothing has been proposed to them. It's okay maybe to have a referendum, yeah, you can do that, which is ludicrous, by the way. No, our premier, bill number 1, when she became premier, she said, no, sovereign Alberta within United Canada. Bill number 2, let's add some condition together of CPP. Here at Ottawa, I'm barking, but I won't take the wallet. That's exactly what she told them. So this is a project, what to have an Alberta pension plan could look like, and how it's easy to get there. My third one is CRA. Let's collect our own tax. Quebec started with that. Control your money, control your wallet. So here, on my front page, I have the Albertan look at these 4 straws, sipping everything to Ottawa. Well, Quebec, they have the same obligation, but they control the straw, and they hold their glasses in their hand. And they have 600 public servants in Gatineau on the other side of the river. You know what's the job of these 600 public servants in Quebec is to do full-time, all year long? Is to cross the river and to look at Ottawa and say, hey guys, we gave you 1.2 billion to take care of that stuff. I think we can do it for 600 million. So give us back 600 million. That's what they do year long. So every year, Quebec makes sure that they get back to the penny what they pay for to Ottawa. Okay, so it's constitutional, we can do it. My last one, this is a good one, paycheck politics. You know that Alberta was the first one to sign an agreement with EI in 1996 that they never used. Meanwhile, Quebec turned around with the same agreement and went and get 250 million more from the EI program to give to their people to renovate a portion of Montreal with a new industry and to create jobs, all paid by EI, the same bucket. And then they say to Ottawa, you know what, we don't want you to control EI. No, we will pay EI, but we will control how EI goes in this province. And you know what they use? They use the agreement that Alberta just has signed. What are we doing? What the heck are we doing? So, so my position, I'm not for separation. My position, I'm for a change of political culture in this province. It's time that we take our place in this country, and not by the numbers, but by the law, by the Westminster system itself, and by what is allowed to do within our own constitution. It's time that we read about what it's allowed, what we can do, and then look at our big brother down east, how they've done it, because whatever they do, we can. And the way they've done it, we can do the same way. And Ottawa has zero they can do against it. And that goes from policing, like a lot of stuff that John just mentioned. It starts by controlling our own destiny. So right now, no, we're the kids that it's like a kid that loves so much his mom that he says, okay, Mom, keep on managing my budget because I want to get married and all that and get separated, but keep the wallet. So it's time that we start by getting our wallet back, collecting our own tax, our own pension, but all that needs a plan, needs a vision. And this is what I'm casting in all of my books. In all of my books, at the end here, I have what you can do, what your MLA should do, what the Premier's office should do, and a schedule to do it. Because we need a plan. We need to know where we're going. I will finish with that. I will end it with that. Of course, I've been told, oh yeah, sure, a Quebecer will come and tell us what to do. No? I'm sorry, but I'm not a Quebecer. I'm an Albertan. I will tell you what makes me an Albertan despite having moved here at 35 years old. I thought a long time about that. All my kids are Albertans. No, my daughter, I have 3 boys and 1 girl, and I say, no, I will die for this province and not for this country. And I thought about 8 heartstrings that define an Albertan. And I believe it's important that we define our culture, who we are. My sister is a Vietnamese. She was adopted in 1981. When, in 1987, my dad works to bring all the rest of her family in Montreal, dads, moms, sisters, brothers. And when you move to Quebec, you have 1 week that it's mandatory, where we tell you the history of Quebec, our values, and all that. And at the end of the week, you have to sign a social contract. If you don't want to sign that social contract, no driver's license, no health care, no social coverage, go to Toronto. This is exactly what the dad and the mom of my sister decided to do. They didn't want to sign that social contract in 1987. They went to Toronto. But to get a social contract, we have to know who we are and what to know what to ask. So here's the 8 heartstring of Albertan. Heartstring number 1, enduring moral compass. So Judeo-Christian values define our laws and identity. Heartstring number 2, earned equality. Merit matters, not identity markers. Heartstring number 3, ends of freedom. Small government, stay in your lane. Heartstring number 4, pioneer grit. Family-centered, self-reliant, property respecting. Heartstring number 5, real leaders, real results. Builders, not spenders. Conviction, not corruption. Heartstring number 6, wise land guardianship. Sustainable use by those who live here. Ottawa don't have to tell us what to do. Heartstring number 7, move or die accountability. Self-reliance, personal responsibility. And heartstring number 8, proud Canadian Albertan. Honor the past, defend the future. I believe that this is what an Albertan is. I believe that this is what makes us different from any other province, anywhere else in the world. And I believe we have to embrace who we are and start taking the action that goes with it and be more sovereign according to what we're able to do. Every U.S. state will be jealous of the rights we have as a province. And now that referendum and the right we have to vote, even to look at secession peacefully and still amongst our democratic system, we have to recognize that without Quebec, we would not have that right. So I just want you to honor that as much as as proud Canadian, I want you to honor that there was lives lost for that right here in this country, on this land, in modern time, as far as 1970. So on that, I will let my good friend Chris Scott take over, and thank you.
Well, there's nothing quite like hearing the story of sovereignty with a French accent. I really like it, especially the part where Ben says, we do and ask forgiveness never. Like, that's kind of it, isn't it? That's kind of what Quebec does. And this is the difference between Alberta and Quebec. Now, I agree with Ben on 98% of things. And as he was delivering his message, it got me thinking, what is it that moved me from wanting to solve all of the problems, as Ben suggested we could, and we could do this within a period of a couple years maximum. We could do all these things. What is it that moved me from just wanting to solve these problems to wanting Alberta specifically to be an independent nation? What got me there? Because before, I was a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada guy. I wanted a referendum on Alberta sovereignty so that we had the leverage to fix the things that needed to be fixed. And Ben describes many of the things that need to be fixed could be done without a referendum. And this isn't anything new, and it's not even that our current leaders don't know these things. Stephen Harper, along with Ted Morton and some others, they're the ones that enumerated these things in a document called the Firewall Letter, an instruction manual for Alberta how to insulate ourselves from a hostile federal government. And arguably, the federal government has been hostile towards the West since 1905. So what changed for me? I realized that we have an opportunity to do something so much more than just solve those problems. We have an opportunity of a lifetime. We have an opportunity of generations. We have an opportunity of a nation's lifetime to do something that's never been done in Canada. And that is, for the first time ever, not just to solve those issues that kind of plague the West and contribute to Western alienation. We have an opportunity, for the first time ever, for us to decide what the rules are, for us to decide what our Constitution looks like. Now, why is that important? We have a Constitution. Many of you probably were very excited when you watched this happen in 1982. You were probably anxious during the early 80s when you're wondering, what's this going to look like? What is it going to mean for me? What is repatriating the Constitution going to do for my rights and freedoms? Was anyone in this room excited about that? I imagine you must have been. I tell a story almost at every event now about watching my fourth grade teacher, Mr. Ruda, talk about the repatriation of the Constitution, because in grade 4, that would have been 8 years previous. So it was pretty recent for him. And the man's face would light up. He was so excited, and he got us excited about it as well. So I can't imagine what it must have been like for an adult to watch that and just be excited about what Canada was doing. So we repatriated the Constitution from the UK. What did we repatriate? Was it something where the people of Canada said, hey, we're going to self-determine, we're going to decide what the rules are, and if people want to govern us, then we're going to consent to let them govern this way? Because as a human being, there's only two ways that you can be governed, and that is through force or through consent. Canada did it through, well, now I say it was a little bit of trickery. So we repatriated a constitution that was written in England by other people that didn't have to suffer the consequence of that document, the British North America Act. And then Pierre Elliott Trudeau brought it to Canada, and it made it ours and enshrined it as our Constitution. And he included the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Was anybody in this room excited about the Charter of Rights and Freedoms? I was. When I was a kid, I thought, man, this is great. The government's giving us all these rights. What I didn't realize back then, and what many of you may not have realized, and probably the vast majority of Canadians right now, is that when the government enumerates the rights and freedoms you have, that means that if they left it out, you don't have it. So the reason why I agree with Ben on everything except for the idea of full independence is because I want to live in a place where the people decide how they're going to be governed. I want to live under a constitution that enshrines your property rights. Our current constitution does not do that. And you could argue that property rights are the province's discretion. And yes, we can rely on that from time to time. But as you'll see again, and you've seen before, if the federal government decides to issue a mandate of sorts, they would never do this, and say you must all do these things or you can't travel on a plane or a train or a boat, you don't do it, it doesn't work out very well for you for a time, right? I want a constitution where the freedom of speech is actually enshrined in there. We don't have that right now. That's why Ottawa can pass a law that says if you say something offensive, we will put you in jail or fine you. That's why in British Columbia, a man said, no, you're not a woman, you are a man impersonating a woman. He got fined $750,000. If we have freedom of speech, we can say whatever we want, and I think everyone should be allowed to say what they want, no matter how disgusting it is. Because if people are thinking it, I want to know they're thinking it. I want them to say it so I know who to have conversations with to try and change their mind. I don't want it to be in secret so that I think, the people that I'm close to, they think these horrible things and we never talk about it because they're scared to say it. That's not freedom. I want that enshrined in our Constitution. I want our Constitution to acknowledge that we have a right to defend ourselves and our families. How many people in this room have heard of situations in Canada where somebody's family was threatened by a villain of some sort, and they defended themselves, and they ended up getting arrested and going to jail? That is not right. I want something different. I want all those things Ben talked about to be resolved. I want our government to have the courage to fix those things. We have a premier who talks about sovereignty. And now I'm starting to, in my mind, every time I hear our premier talking about a sovereign Alberta, I gag a little bit. And then I have this image in my mind of our premier and Stephen Harper and Jason Kenney and Pierre Poilievre and some of these other people that want our support and our vote and our money, standing there and singing in harmony, "We desire, and every patriotic Canadian desires, that the great trade of the prairies go to enrich our lives and build up our factories and places of work in the East." That's what I hear now. Now if all of these people that talked about Alberta sovereignty and said they could fix these situations, if all of them are campaigning against the idea of Alberta sovereignty right now, what does that tell you? Who's advocating for Albertans? Is there anybody? Is there any politician right now, today, that you can say, that person's advocating for Alberta? That person is going to do something to advance sovereignty in Alberta. I can't think of one. But over the past 6 years, I've met likely hundreds of thousands of people by now who all want something different. They all want something better. Many of those people are willing to do the things required to make it happen. They come and they fill these seats. They put money in the donation bucket so we can continue going and talking to people. They participate in civics. They go to AGMs. They support people who support Alberta sovereignty. The will is there. But that one thing that was said is missing. And no, it's not balls. Courage. The courage is missing. We know the facts. We've experienced what happens when Ottawa interferes in places they don't belong. When they say, oh, we're going to put an emissions cap on because climate. We watch as the unemployment line in Alberta grows. When Ottawa decides they want to tax us for the air we breathe, we feel it. We realize, oh, well, maybe our kids can't get that nice thing now because we're going to send some more money to Ottawa to pay for carbon dioxide. We feel these things. We know something needs to change. And I have a lot of hope because of all the conversations I've had with people about these things that we're going to make some change, but I'm also a little bit, I'm not going to say scared, I'm worried. I'm worried that as the gaslighting from our politicians continues, and as the nothing burger MOUs are signed, people will choose comfort over courage. Because it's much easier and much more comfortable to say, you know, I agree it would be better if Alberta was independent, but if we just elect this guy, you know, he will eat the crap out of that apple and everything will get better. Or we just need to support, we just need to win this next election, we just need to beat the NDP and everything's going to be better. I worry that people are going to be gaslit by those who benefit from the current structure. By those who are waiting for the golden claw to come down from federal politics and scoop them out of the provincial legislature and plop them into a higher wage and a pension. I worry that as they gaslight Albertans to give up on what they really believe, that people will choose the comfort over courage. Would you agree with me that right now it's much easier to go out and put a Forever Canadian sign on your lawn? Although I think I'm going to get one because we are actually all going to be Forever Canadian, regardless of whether or not Alberta leaves. That's the truth. It's easier to do that. It's easier to support the status quo than to have the courage and say, no, something is wrong. And this isn't about money. It's not about taxes. It's not even about the Senate. It's about self-determination and an entire group, 5.5 million people. It's about those people having the right to self-determination, which we don't have right now. And you can argue until you're blue in the face and telling me, it's a democracy, Chris. Sometimes in a democracy, you just don't get your way. BS. If that was the case, our election wouldn't be called before our ballot boxes are opened. And no, that's not because of the time zone. It's because once the ballots are cast to the Manitoba border, they can call the election because they know our votes won't change anything. This is the problem. I'm done thinking that Alberta should be begging for the scraps of Confederation. I was never a fan of Jason Kenney's plan to just be happy with the incremental changes. Oh, you got an MOU, be happy with that. Oh, you're getting a pipeline, maybe. Be happy with that. The crumbs of Confederation. I'm not happy with that anymore. But even more than that, I'm just beside myself, excited about the opportunity. We got all these problems over here. Problems within Confederation, too high a taxes. Can you bring me one of those bottles, Jasper, please? I got to show you something. No, the open one there. The one by Bonnie, if you don't mind. Is this one open? Yeah, okay. I went to Europe a few years ago, and I went because when I was in Ottawa, standing up for myself and for people that believed in what we were doing, I watched on social media as Dutch people were flying Canadian flags in overpasses, and they were in their tractors flying Canadian flags, standing with the Canadian truckers. Can you believe it? The Dutch were doing that. And I was like, man, this is Fantastic. Not only do they know what's going on, but they believe in the fight that we're having here. So when I saw the Dutch farmers standing up for themselves, I was like, I'm getting on an airplane. I got nowhere to go, nowhere to stay, don't know anybody. I'm getting on an airplane. I'm going to go talk to some farmers, and I want to make sure that they know that I support them and that those who support me are watching what's going over there, and we support their fight for freedom. So I went over there and I talked to some Dutch people, and I found out some really interesting things. The Dutch farmers were rising up because the government was regulating them off their farms, creating situations where it was no longer economically viable for them to farm. Now, if you're a farmer here, you felt that a little bit, for sure, especially in the last 15 years. But the Dutch government literally wanted 30% of farms to just be gone forever. 30%, can you imagine? And then I start finding out, wait a minute, this 30% number, I've heard this before. Where have I heard this? Justin Trudeau was talking about 30% reduction in nitrogen, potentially giving 30% of our land back to nature, removing 30% of human impact. I'm thinking, okay, we obviously didn't vote for that. We didn't ask our government to do that. Where's this messaging come from? So as I had these conversations, I realized the messaging is not coming from us. It's coming from someone else across the ocean, a big ocean, making policies and trying to get us to adopt it, knowing that they will never suffer the consequences for those policies. Anti-human policies, treating human beings like a virus on the planet, saying that we shouldn't be here, offering, hey, we need to expand the MAID program. We need to make sure that anybody can get an abortion at any time because human life isn't valuable. So I start learning about these things and realizing where they're coming from, and then I put two and two together, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, this is in Canadian politics. We have this guy from Austria bragging about how he controls people in our parliament, and his policies are coming here, and Alberta can't do anything about it because we don't have a big enough voice, so we're along for this ride? And I realized Europe is like a crystal ball for North America. If you look at what's going on in Europe right now, that will be here in 2 years. If you think about what was going on in Europe 2 years ago, they were paying, guess how much they were paying for diesel fuel 3 years ago? Per liter, $2. How much are we paying now? $2. Jasper was telling me about this really annoying, oh, this one's broken, I need the other one. This really annoying policy in Europe, law, that said if you have a drink, now you're so irresponsible, human beings, the cap will be tethered to your bottle. Because of nature, because of the environment. That was 4 years ago. And I didn't think of anything of it at the time. That's a European thing, European fad. Today, as I opened this water, and I'm trying to pull the cap off like you always do, couldn't come off, thought it was stuck, didn't think anything of it. Then I'm sitting there flicking it, and I'm flicking this lid, thinking, it's coming. All of those things that are happening in Europe are coming here. And you might think, oh, that's ridiculous. It's just a bottle. It's not just a bottle. It's part of a global initiative that treats us differently. Not as beautifully and wonderfully created with purpose and distinction by a loving God to inhabit a planet for us, but as a stain on nature. Those policies that are ravaging Europe right now, and by the way, talk to Jasper after and ask him how many farmers have been pushed out of Holland, the breadbasket of the world. Those policies are coming here. And not only do we not have politicians that are very boldly standing up against it, pursuing the sovereignty required to weather that storm, they're gaslighting you into believing that you are some sort of a social pariah for having the courage to say something needs to change. And they want your vote, and they want your money. I had a completely different speech planned until I opened that water bottle. Can you believe it? So in a way, as these things creep up to our doorstep, and yes, there's much worse things than a lid on a water bottle, every time I see something like this, I think about these things. I think about what is required in Alberta and what is required of Albertans to weather the storm that is on our doorstep. And what's required doesn't exist in politics today. It may exist in the political conversation after October, depending on what you folks do. If you leave here and you go back to your places and you don't have the conversation and you succumb to the fear or you instead pursue the comfort of the status quo instead of having the courage to have the necessary but difficult conversations to make change, there is no solution. If you have the courage to do what's necessary and you have the courage to pursue the changes required, we will win. I know that 100% for sure. We have witnessed this in other parts of the world many, many times. And it's not the vast majority of people that get involved and start talking and be courageous and enact the change. It's like 3.5 or 4% of the people do it. 3.5 to 4% of a population that has the courage to have the conversations, the courage to pursue the change, they change the direction of the society. That is a fact. So don't let anyone ever tell you you are a fringe minority. Don't let anyone ever tell you, oh, the polls suggest this, the polls suggest that. Polls are bullshit. We've seen it time and time again, and people just continue to allow the media and politicians to gaslight you with poll numbers. This movement, this appetite that Alberta has for something different is way bigger than what people think. Oh, but Chris, there was only 300,000 people that signed for independence. No, there was roughly 300,000 people that had the courage to put their name on a piece of paper demanding a referendum from the government, even though many of those people were worried that if their name was on a piece of paper that the government would persecute them. Can you believe that I just said that in a country like Canada? That people were scared to participate in the democratic process because they thought their government would prosecute or persecute them? That, for me, is reason to take it to the streets and sign every paper that comes in front of you, except for ones that say, to stay, in my opinion. The things that we feel about our government here in Alberta, and here in Canada for that matter, are not feelings of free people in a democratic nation. They are the feelings of people that know that something is wrong, but haven't grown the courage yet to do what needs to do to change it. That's why the conversation is so important. That's why this is called Let's Talk Alberta, because we need to start talking about these things. Not just the stupid lid on the bottle, although that's a very good foreshadowing. I witnessed that 4 years ago in Holland. It's here now. Right now in Holland, they're at the farmers again, trying to regulate them out of business. They will be here for you next. That's a given. Fuel prices, right now they're paying $4 Canadian. $4.20 Canadian for a liter of diesel in Holland. You will be paying $4.20 a liter here in 3 years. That's the way it goes. Or we do something different. Anyway. We're going to take a 10, 15-minute break. Let's make it 15 because it's, even with the air conditioner, it's really hot in here now because every person puts out about 100 BTUs. I mentioned the buckets. Okay, Shane and Jasper are going to pass the buckets around. Please, if you appreciate what we're trying to do, if you appreciate that we're trying to facilitate this conversation in Alberta, please consider throwing something in the bucket, not your chewing gum, something that can be exchanged for goods or services. Cash, silver, gold bars, whatever. And this isn't because Let's Talk Alberta gets paid, or people get paid, it's because doing the things we do costs money. Bonnie, how many trifolds did we print over the last 2 weeks, off the top of your head?
Oh, boy, I don't know. You printed an awful lot.
Over 20,000. We have printed and distributed over 20,000 trifolds, and we got another couple thousand here. There's a few thousand at the office. We're booking venues all across Alberta. Mailing isn't cheap. I think the spend for neighborhood mail to date, because we're trying to do a mail out before each event, the spend for neighborhood mail is sitting right around $2,500. That's for 10 days. So this isn't cheap. If you can chip in, please do. We really appreciate it. And for those of you that don't know, with a little luck, by the end of the week, we're going to have a very big, beautiful surprise for you and for every Albertan. We are going to have the largest rolling billboard Alberta has ever seen, promoting Alberta, promoting the conversation about Alberta. And every penny you put in the bucket helps for that too. We're paying $2 a liter for diesel. Oh, Bonnie wants me to ask, if you don't mind sharing, is there anyone in the room tonight that this is their first event of this type? Just raise your hand. That's fantastic. That's awesome. Thank you for coming and thank you for being part of the conversation. And if you have questions or you have comments or opposition points or challenges or concerns or anything, please speak up. Let us know. If you're shy and you don't want to go to the microphone and ask the question, go see Bonnie. She can write your question down and she will speak the question for you. We want to make sure that everybody is heard and everybody has a chance to ask their questions. Jasper's pointing at Bonnie. Oh, there's water in the fridge if you're thirsty. Okay, thanks for putting up with me this long, folks. We'll see you in 15 minutes.
Okay, well, there's Ben. I think John's still outside. Somebody wants to yell for John to come on in. And Chris is coming. He's just washing his hands. So I will turn it over to you now, Ben.
We're just going to explain how it's going to work for the Q&A, guys. So where's Jasper? Okay, eventually you're going to see Jasper with a microphone. Jasper is right now by the door with a microphone, you see? Yeah, here's a microphone. So if you have questions, just wave your hand and he will come to you with the microphone. It's important that we're in a very close room, so it's not a big of a problem. But it's important that if you want to speak or just respond to a question or what have you, to speak on the microphone, because this is being live streamed right now on my feed and on Chris's feed. So if you don't hold your microphone, even though we can hear there, and the stream nothing can be heard on the stream, okay? And I will be very digitally to remind people that if you don't have the microphone, I will say something like, microphone, microphone. Here we go. And I'm very serious.
I want the microphone.
No microphone for you.
I want a microphone. Oh, there it is. Anybody here ever heard of the expression, a rose between two thorns?
Can
So if you have a question, I will come over to you. So if you've got a question, I will come over. Like Chris stated already, if you have a question and you're hesitating and you don't want to be answered, go up to Bonnie. Bonnie will write it down, and I will go up to Bonnie and see he's going to read your question.
Or comments, specifically comments in opposition of kind of what we're saying. I'd love to hear that too. And while we're waiting for the ice to break, I do want to say thank you for the use of this wonderful space, and for supper, and for those delicious snacks. This is absolutely wonderful. So thank you very, very much.
Is it on? Hello? Yeah, okay. I'm Susan, and my question is, with all these things and opportunities that Danielle has had to make these changes, why has she not? Is there something forcing her to, step back, or what's going on?
Well, I can't speak for her. I'm an outsider looking in. I used to believe that maybe it was some sort of a grand scheme to pursue Alberta sovereignty, but the farther along we go, and not having any of the real sovereignty issues addressed that could be addressed even without people knowing, I don't know that it was ever the plan. And I'm just saying that based on the experience, based on my observations. So there's all sorts of theories out there as to why she hasn't done the things. I think rather than speculate, maybe it's more important to me to acknowledge that it does not appear that her path is the path to Alberta sovereignty in any case, which means that we need to do something different if that's the outcome we want.
I have a slightly different, there you go. I have a slightly different take on that. I also can't speak for Danielle, but I always thought that she was walking a tight line within the members of the party that were elected to sit as MLAs in Alberta's legislature. I think that less now than I did then. If she truly was, and I'm certainly not going to accuse her of duplicity, But if she truly was in favor of a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada, then she would have done something about that. There are things that she can do that Ben has talked about that are easily done with a memo that actually would assert Alberta's sovereignty within a united Canada. Those things haven't been done. Now, there's two reasons that are possible for that. One is the senior members of the UCP that form the government are federalists, and she can't go against them. That's one possibility. The other possibility is exactly what you said, is it never was her objective in the first place. Now, my opinion is now, and it has been for a long time, that we elect Alberta MLAs to represent the interests of Alberta and Albertans. And that isn't happening. Every time we send a delegation to Ottawa on bended knees to beg for permission to build a pipeline or develop trade relationships with another country or reduce the impact of equalization so that we can actually use money we make in Alberta to help Albertans, every time we send somebody down to Ottawa to beg for that lessens my belief that she is serious when she says she wants a sovereign Alberta.
The thing that I found a bit puzzling in all of that is there is very easy signal that can be done very, very easily that wouldn't hurt politically. One of them being to, for instance, to collect the $500 million a week that we get in royalty in the Alberta institution. You know that we collect all of our royalties from oil at the CIBC. Every Friday afternoon, there's close to $500 million that is deposited in Calgary and Edmonton in the Toronto Bank, on which they do about $2 or $3 million during the weekend, just holding that money and holding the float for Alberta. And then the main account, operation account of the province is the Royal Bank, RBC. Again, it just for me, it's just such a simple thing. In Quebec, it would be, it would be. I mean, they would destroy the legislature if ever they would do that, holding any penny of Quebec outside of the province. And I don't understand, because what we need to have all this money to be deposited at ATB, which is owned by the government, it's a memo from the minister. That's all. It's a memo to the deputy minister saying, hey, buddy, you shut down the account at CIBC on Monday morning, open ATB, period. Thank you. Minister Brian Jean. And it's not done. So I believe it's a general culture in this province to just not to do stuff. The same with equalization. In equalization, so Quebec received $3.5 billion more than they should, because they give a special rate to their citizen for electricity. So every time you have a meter on your house in Quebec, you're under the special rate D. Rate D deprive Hydro-Quebec of $7 billion a year in revenues. Okay? The way equalization is calculated, very simple. It's 50% of what is generated by your natural resources. So right there, Quebec get $3.5 billion more just by giving it back to their citizen. Well, we can do the same. This is what I have in this book. We can do the same with fuel. I was listening about the $4 a liter for diesel. Well, I can tell you that if we decide just to cash our royalties in kind, which we can do, like in our rule right now, we can tell any oil company or gas company, don't send us a check, give us some gas, give us some oil. If we just do that, and if we start spreading that wealth across the people to the same level as Quebec, we would end up having a system that the more the oil increase in value and the more it decrease at the pump for Albertans. And that would shield us of, I made the formula in that book, that would shield us of the same $3.5 billion than Quebec that the feds couldn't take. What it would cost in our budget, in our provincial budget? Zero, niet, niche, nothing. So again, we need nada. So again, we need to think sovereign. We need to think to keep our stuff here.
So something just occurred to me. The same people who are now advocating for the status quo, telling us, oh no, we just want Alberta to stay and keep everything the same. If they had done the things that needed to be done for Alberta and for Albertans, and they've all had opportunity at one point or another, Harper, Kenney, Trudeau, Poilievre, a number of them, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And yet they didn't do any of the things. Why is that? Why is it that those who purport to represent Albertans' interests haven't ever done the things necessary to do that? And now they're campaigning against another solution. I don't have the answer as to why, but eventually the dots are going to connect, and there's a monkey in there with symbols, and he's doing this right now, and these things are churning around in my head. And the more I think about it, the more I consider the voices that are advocating for the status quo now and what they could have done in years gone by that would have prevented this whole thing. There's something I'm missing, and eventually we're going to see it. It's probably going to be in hindsight, but I'm excited for that day.
My name's Rob Johnson. A question that is related to the question that just came. Do you think that the federal Conservatives have a de facto type government because they get a way higher percentage of the vote in Alberta? They take way more money out of Alberta for the party. They have a historical stranglehold on the vote in Alberta, and do you think that they put pressure on our provincial government to conduct themselves a specific way?
I don't think so.
I know they do, 100%. When we were talking about an Alberta pension plan, which should have been done by now, we should be at the final stages of the transition period, and it should be happening next year if we had done it. Pierre Poilievre was here and said, no, Alberta, you're better off in the CPP, and told Smith's government, don't talk about it, it's bad for my campaign. I know they are. I'll also say I don't believe we have a federal Conservative Party. The reason why the CPC has maintained the stranglehold on the West is because they have gaslit Western Canadian provinces to believe that they are the only solution, knowing that at no point in Confederation history has any federal government been able to do anything to solve the inequities or imbalance of power east to west. They know they can't do it because they have to win the East. We saw this with Andrew Scheer, right? He mentioned, what did he talk about? Supply management. Poof. 100,000 memberships were bought in the CPC, and he was removed as leader, right? So at no point in history has any Conservative government been able to successfully advocate for Alberta, nor do I believe they could, but they've convinced Albertans that it's so scary to live under a Liberal government that we have to give them our money, fill up stadiums, rent them private jets, all of these things so that it can be less bad. But I'm done with less bad, and I want an Alberta solution.
You know, it's interesting when you talk about the Constitution being patriated back to Canada. Was everybody or anybody excited about that? I wasn't. I was a young adult at that time. In '82, I was in my 30s. The one thing that didn't occur with that patriation was the ability to amend the Constitution. So what we brought back from England was a document that vested power in central Canada and did nothing to make the power distribution fair between the hinterlands of Canada, which include the Maritimes and Western Canada. Not only that, the negotiations around 1982 solidified those things and further made it more difficult to ever amend the Constitution. So bringing that Constitution back to Canada, or to Canada initially, didn't do a darn thing for us because it came back here impossible to change. So the only way we can deal with that is by exercising the rights and authorities that we have under the existing British North America Act and the Constitution Act of '82 and 1930 in New Westminster. What we need to do, what we can do, and we need a government in Alberta that is willing to do those things, or nothing will change. And the only way we can get that is by the very first concern of any politician once they're elected is to get elected again. So the only way that we can make sure that those changes occur is to threaten their re-election. So if they feel that their position is in jeopardy, they may in fact accede to making some of the representations under the Constitution that we need them to make. And the only way we can do that is if we have a failure in October, and if the government of Alberta doesn't change and start to represent Albertans' interests, then we have to tell them, okay, well, I guess we should have a separatist party. Oh, but if you do that, the NDP will come up the middle and win. And my response to that will be, then you need to do something about it. You need to change the way you're representing us. Because if you allow us to create a separatist party and the NDP run up the middle, it's because you wouldn't do what we elected you to do. So get off your butts and get it done.
You have to look as well at the relationship with politics is a small world, and a lot of people don't know that when she was in her 20s, Danielle Smith, she was the queen of the auto dialer. So there was these computer that would dial during a campaign, and she was part in '98 of a coalition named Grassroots for Day, campaigning for Stockwell Day against Stephen Harper at the time, and who was in that Grassroots for Day meeting every week in her living room in Calgary because she was the queen of the auto dialer. It was Pierre Poilievre with Jenny, his girlfriend, who's now the campaign chair. It was Ezra Levant, who was there every week. It was there is a long personal relationship that does exist among these leaders now of both parties and right-wing media that we need to think of. And one big concern that I had for the past, let's say, just over a year is that I learned that Premier Smith was doing like 2 to 3 hours of French every week. So she does speak French more than I do. Every week. And why so? Why would a premier would take 3 hours of her precious time to learn French in Alberta, unless she has other goals? So that's all I want to say. And I don't do that in a conspiracy way. It's just a fact, no? Like our good friend Pierre is the boss of the Federal Conservatives, so she won't go against him, and maybe she sees herself as the next one, no?
So I'm the guy who's from Holland that Chris is talking about. He was talking about you're paying now the $2 for diesel. We're paying the $4.20 for diesel. But if I'm looking in the future, the European Union is talking about we need to put in more taxes. So they're talking about the European is the 5th sovereign state, and they're actually doing taxes now. So above the $4.20, which is €2.80, it's going to be higher. So that's what they're talking about in the Netherlands. I wanted to ask, first of all, thank you for being here. For the people on the live stream, thank you for taking the effort. Who's been driving here by a car that's older than 4 years? Exactly. Back home in Holland, we've got a zero emission zone. That means that all who've been raising their arms can't go into the bigger cities. There are now 23 cities in Holland. If your car is older than 23 or 4 years, you're not allowed to take it in. So you need to take public traffic. And it's coming here. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do they do in public traffic first thing you get on?
Well, that's a big step first. First, you need to take your telephone, download the app. It's the public traffic app. That needs to be connected to your bank account. So that's the first step, wherever you go. So you go up to the bus, you go up to the train station, and you have to check in with your telephone or your bank card. Then you see it on your app, and it's automatically already been reserved on your bank account. Yes, so that's step one. You get into an electric bus from China or in the train. There's a facial recognition camera hanging, pointing on your face. There's a screen where you can see yourself. And when you finally arrive at your destination, you have to check out because the bank of your the traffic app will know exactly how much they need to charge from your bank account.
That sounds very convenient and for your safety.
Yeah.
Well, I'm quite behaving because my diesel car is older than 4 years. I need to take public traffic if I need to go to court because I'm a journalist. I'm doing politics and court cases, which is in Den Haag or in Amsterdam. So I have to park my diesel van at the city hub, get over to the bus, check in, and go over there. So.
Wow. Are you moving here? Moving here.
Well, I really appreciate all the Albertans. You're really kind and really lovely, really open. I love the landscape, but my fight is back home. So the same thing what these guys are doing, I'm doing back home.
If I can talk to you a bit about what it is, simple stuff, financially speaking. These 4 little books, what I've done, I took the 8 money suckers of Alberta. We always says that we leave about 30 billion a year on the feds, so we leave 30 billion more than what we get back. And what I've done, I built a table with what are these 30 billion and how do we get our money back? How do we don't leave it there? And it's crazy how with will it can be quite easy and quick. I remember the one of the oldest memory I have with my dad. It was during the Montreal Olympics in 1976. I was 4 years old. We were on the plaza of the Olympics with all the flags, and Dad was having a conversation with a man that I was looking like that, and I didn't know who he was at the time, but that was René Lévesque, who became premier a few months after. The strength of the PQ in 1976 was the team. So what they've done from 1970 to 1976, they took time to build a team. René Lévesque was elected, but I can tell you that 50 years later, I still remember names of ministers of that first government. Know why? Because they wrecked everything in the province. They built a plan and they put it execute it to the T. Okay, up to 1982, where Quebec was excluded of signing the Constitution. So René Lévesque was sent back home in his hotel in Gatineau, saying, "Okay, we'll recap the tomorrow." And then there's a very bad individual that I don't like. A lot of people in our group likes it. His name is Brian Beckford. Manipulate stuff with Jean Chrétien to sign the Constitution without Quebec. And René Lévesque woke up the next morning, opened the newspaper during his breakfast, and found out that the premier came to an agreement. And there's two things that Trudeau made that changed our country forever. The first thing, he put the Charter of Right and Freedom against Lockheed will. Lockheed wanted to have personal right, personal property included, and he had to make a concession. It was not included. Second thing that they've done, the equalization until that day was a law that could be repealed every day of the week at the Commons, and they put it into it. So there's two things that, and they did that, why? To make sure that they would create welfare provinces. And by creating these welfare provinces, they would assure that that constitution is locked down in a safe, the keys throughout the sea, because we need 7 provinces representing 50% of the population. By creating 4 welfare provinces, with the equalization representing about a quarter of all of their revenues, Trudeau assured that these provinces will never vote to reopen the constitution under any circumstances. So we're locked in that constitution, which is a huge problem. And this is why I believe that we have to start playing with it if we're not getting out of it. But step one is let's play with it. Let's play what it allows us to do. And I don't believe that Ottawa will be able to deal with 2 problem child.
And I just want to ask you, after that happened, what was the first bill that they passed in the Quebec legislature following the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the Constitution Act?
That's funny because the first bill, when Lévesque came back to the ledge, and by the way, in Quebec, they all often have, so right now they have like 5 parties in the Quebec legislature, no? So 5, not only 2. And even that 5 parties, they can get some law where they get unanimous vote amongst the 5 parties. So anyway, so what Lévesque did when he came back, he basically passed a law putting the notwithstanding clause over every law that Quebec had voted until then. So the notwithstanding clause was applied retroactively on over 1,500 law, and from there on until the PQ left power in 1986. Every time that the Quebec legislature was voting something, they would apply the notwithstanding clause. So that notwithstanding clause is something, in French it's clause non-obstant. I heard that to the news every day in my youth because they applied it over 1,800 times. Okay, so when Alberta is criticized to use it 4 times, I mean, this is laughable. Like shut up, no? Like,
You know, I've come to really admire the way Quebec has handled it. Just a quick question: anybody here know how much more money we send to Ottawa every year than we get back? Is it somewhere in the neighborhood of what?
30 billion.
About $25, $30 billion. Okay, let me just do some quick numbers here. Prince Edward Island gets $0.7 billion a year through equalization. New Brunswick gets $3.4 billion through equalization. Nova Scotia gets $3.5 billion through equalization. Manitoba gets $5 billion through equalization, and Quebec gets $13.97 or $14 billion a year through equalization. Do you know what that adds up to? Let's see, that's 7, 4, 7, 12, and 4 is 16, 17. What is that? 13, 5, 18, 21, 24, about $25 billion. So when you say that Alberta contributes $25 billion more in federal revenue than we get back, every penny of that is accounted in these numbers. So when we say that 2 other provinces don't get any equalization back, that being Saskatchewan and British Columbia, they don't. But they don't contribute a heck of a lot either. It all comes from here. And that has to change.
I will tell you though, I made a table of the 30 billion, where do we lose what, no? The number one that we lose the most is on our federal personal income tax. We leave 12 billion on the table on this one. The federal corporate income tax, that's beside the provincial income tax as charger, 5 billion. The equalization is number 3 at 3.2 billion. Old age benefits, 3 billion that we leave on the table. The missing federal presence. So basically, they collect paycheck here and create jobs somewhere else. So there's 3 billion of that. 2.53 billion on the pension, the Canada pension plan. $2 billion of GST, and $1.5 billion of employment insurance. And in these 4 books, this is what I've done. I say, okay, I will took every of these 8, and what is the solution to keep the most money? And if we just apply what is in this 4 little booklet, we will go from 30 billion left on the table to 8 billion. So we will recuperate 22 billion in our economy just by doing that. And all that can be done strictly by legislative process, by the ledge, voting, okay, we're cutting our own taxes, okay. You know what, there's one very, very interesting one that I was not thinking of. It's that table that made me write this one. So this one is about, I call it the paycheck politics. This one is about the jobs that are created in other provinces through our taxes. So basically, we fund directly jobs in New Brunswick, jobs in PEI, jobs, and basically we could require that to have a similar presence of federal institution here for at least for the job to remain in this province. The other thing that I found very interesting, in 1996, Alberta was the first province to sign a new deal with EI to say we're going to control the labor stuff. So Alberta signed it in December 1996. Quebec signed it in February 1997. Alberta, do you know what they've done with that agreement? They put it and they shelved it. Quebec did that agreement and gained over $500 million a year more from EI with the agreement that was dealt and negotiated by Alberta. So why don't we use the agreement that we renegotiated ourselves in 96? It's still on the shelf. We still can do it. We're not. So there's a real, very deep problem in the political culture of this province, and you need to shift.
Well, do you want to know why, Ben? We desire, and every Canadian patriot desires, that the great trade of the prairies go to build up our factories and places of work in the East and contribute in every conceivable way to our prosperity. That's why.
Well, I disagree with you on that, Chris, because that regulation can be applied tomorrow morning. You can dust it from the shelf and say, okay, this is what we're doing now in Alberta. And we could, tomorrow morning, patriate back, because right now we leave on the table of EI something like 1.something billion more than what we collect. Well, I have the number here, whatever. That 1-something billion that we leave on the table only on the EI payment. So we leave 1.5 billion more than what we receive, EI. Well, only with the rules that the legislation that we negotiated in 1996, if we would just use it, we would be able to get another $500 million back. So instead of leaving 1.5 on the table, we leave 1 billion. So anyway, so maybe John, you're more.
I've got something to say, and these 4 little booklets that Ben has produced really are a detailed summary of 4 items that he has in this book. And I got to tell you that I bought this book, and my wife has devoured it. I've perused it because my wife tells me what's in it in great detail regularly. But I would suggest, if you really want to know what Quebec has done legally and within the rules of our Constitution to establish their sovereignty, read this. Buy it. It's only $20. Buy it and read it.
So Ben's book, and by the way, Ben is sort of insider, so it's lovely to pick his brain sometimes what the political people are thinking. If you want to have a slow read on his French talk, go outside and buy his book. I've got several questions, so I need to cut you off, but I've got Bonnie over here.
Hello, this is for Ben. I saw something on a YouTube video. I think Mark Miller was saying something about in expanding the use of French in federally regulated private businesses act. Now, according to ChatGPT, it hasn't expanded much to Alberta yet, but that means like banks, airlines, railways, telecommunications companies, trucking companies are going to have to be able to accommodate French language. And I just wondered if you had a few words to say about that. I don't think that's going to go over too well here.
Well, again, no, the administration of corporation is provincial jurisdiction. The application of justice is provincial jurisdiction. When in 1982 or even before that, in the 70s, when the old fart, when Trudeau decided to bring the bilingualism, he gave the option to every province to choose what they want. There's only one province that chooses to be bilingual, is New Brunswick. And Quebec choose to be French only. And all the others choose to be English. So whatever ludicrous law that they want to pass, what we can do, and this is the thing that Quebec do, by the way. You know, like the Clarity Act, that stupid regulations on how to remain in Canada, basically, when they passed it in 2000, the next morning at the legislature in Quebec, they voted against it. So in Quebec, in the legislature of Quebec, it says that if ever there is a referendum in Quebec, two things. First, it's binding. Secondly, F off with the Clarity Act. We won't deal it. So when the federal pass ridiculous law for us, if you really want to be sovereign within United Canada, if that law says, well, sorry, buddy, no, like we are an English province. We already bow down to have like stupid French on our milk cartons. We won't force our trucking company to speak French. So again, it's a question of attitude, the position. No, so all these laws, these regulations. First, I doubt that it would pass because that would wreck Ontario way more than us in terms of their in terms of their market. Quebec has been shipping all these English to Ontario for so long that they don't want them to rock the boat there. So I believe it's just like to steer the pot.
We've got an online question from Freedom Calendar. Max, here you go.
Actually, yes, one of my online questions. A couple of days ago, we saw some foreign students protesting and doing some hunger strikes, apparently. What do you think can happen to them once Alberta becomes independent?
Apply through the proper channels, do what you need to do, follow the rules, or go home. Period. Like there's now to be clear, I'm not saying at all that an independent Alberta shouldn't accept international students or anything like that. What I'm saying is there's a process and procedures for a reason. It's not by accident, it's by design so that the people we're bringing in are contributing to our economy, those types of things. Other than that, like, I'm not super aware of exactly what they're protesting. I think what they're protesting is that Canada, the federal government, isn't helping them to find jobs after they're done school here. And I honestly, I'm sorry, but I would just say tough. If you choose a profession or a vocation that isn't required in Alberta, then why would we expect our citizens to pony up to pay for programs to subsidize your employment in our country? That's not how it works. And as a Canadian, I wouldn't expect to be able to go to any other country and then demand that their government find me a job or subsidize me. It's absolutely ridiculous.
That's not what they're protesting, in effect. My wife and I have some experience with this because we're putting a couple of kids through university in Mexico that we consider part of our family. And we looked at bringing them into Canada. And the process for a foreign student in Canada was that you could get a student visa, and during your off time, you know, when you're not in school, you could work. So you could work during the Christmas holidays and during the summer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And there was a provision that allowed you to apply for permanent residency and a work permit when you finished your education. What's happened to many of these foreign students is that their application for permanent residency has been denied. Under the regulations that exist now, their application has been denied. And they're upset because in their minds, this wasn't automatic. Once they finished their education, they would automatically get a permanent residency and be allowed to work in the country. That's what they're protesting.
I believe it's a great occasion for outreach. If they accept Jesus, their hunger strike can make sense by fasting and praying. So. That's what I would do.
So the reason I mentioned that if their vocation isn't required is because what I read was there's a lot of students coming here and they're taking programs that are not for workers that we need, and then they're angry that we're not providing them a spot in that field that wasn't ever necessary.
That's it. But what it really boils down to is that in order for them to qualify for that permanent residency, they have to have a job. So if they need to find a job on their own. If they can't find a job, then they don't qualify for permanent residency. They go home.
And that's another place where Alberta can control its immigration. Quebec had its own Minister of Immigration since the 70s. And they, because they've been doing it for so long, they were able to create a special regulation for themselves in 91 because they already have 20 years of background to show the feds that it's better if we take care of this, that, and this. So again, it's just for us under the actual constitution to say, you know what, guys, we're creating the Alberta Ministry of Immigration. We're taking control of EI. We're taking control of our professional program. We're taking back that $500 million. We're taking back that $400 million. We're taking back this. And no, so it's just a question of doing stuff. So.
Does anyone here have any questions here?
Yeah, over here. I understand there are a lot of farmers in here, and people will. It's gonna rain, so here you go, sir.
Okay, it's very helpful to learn about the problems and the solutions you have. What is the game plan to implement these solutions?
Number one, talk about it with your friends, your family, your neighbors, everybody. Number two, manifest your desire for change in the way you vote on the referendum in October. And after that, continue advocating for the changes that you wish to see. So Let's Talk Alberta, we're not telling you which way to vote. We're expressing our opinions, and if we can bring you to our way of thinking, what our opinions are, then obviously we'll probably have the same kind of a vote in October. But that's the process. Have the conversations, change people's minds, manifest in a referendum, hold the government's feet to the fire to actually start the process, and then binding referendum after that. There is a quicker path, and I'll let Ben chime in on that, I guess, after.
Yeah, well... Well, the quicker path is again using what we have right now. I believe that it's a bit sad that Alberta became a province with only two parties. I believe that it's one person's fault, sadly, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Fact is fact. No, there's one person in the history of Canadian politics, the only leader of the opposition that jumped ship to go with the premier party and basically destroyed the third party that exists in this province, and that was Daniel Smith. And when you fast forward, that fear of the NDP, I believe is absolutely a detriment. It's a problem right now that we have. So I believe let's vote on October 19 and on October 20th. Let's use whatever result we have on October 19 to ask for change. And if that change cannot happen within within the structure, let's start a new structure. So
I've got a last...
I have something to add to that. Something I've learned in the 40 years or so that I've been involved in political action is that I've learned never to look beyond the mark. Like your question was, what's the steps, what's the plan? And as far as looking beyond the mark right now is October of 2026. The objective is to win the referendum. We don't need to look beyond the mark because that results in analysis paralysis. We start to say, well, what about this? What about that? What about pensions? What about government? How are we going to do that? That stops the whole process. The mark we're looking at right now is the referendum. Once we get the referendum, the next mark will be the binding referendum. Once we get that one, the mark will be, what kind of government do we want? And we'll have citizens gather to make that decision. So I beg of you, do not look beyond the mark. The mark right now is the referendum in October. It's not, what are we going to do about police forces? What are we going to do about tax? That comes later. We need to concentrate on winning the referendum.
So I've got a last question for tonight over here. Here you go, ma'am.
So I'm Mary Ellen Goslin, and just, I guess what people want to kind of hear too is, yes, the referendum is important, like what you're saying, that's the mark that we're shooting for, but are there behind the scenes people that are doing plans to make this happen in a quick way, or is this going to take 10, 20 years to plan after the referendum?
So yes, and the first group of people that have been doing that for 65 years is Quebec. Quebec has a very, very well thought out template. They have a stack of books, thick on all of the things that need to change, how it needs to happen, who needs to be responsible for it, all of these types of things. In Alberta specifically, we have groups that are working with industry leaders in different areas saying, okay, this is how this industry would transition from a federally regulated by Canada to federally regulated by Alberta. Those things are being done. Keith Wilson with the Transition Council is one of them. We have people and groups working on draft constitutions. We have people from all over Canada chiming in on what a great constitution would look like for Alberta. We have 1,000 years of democratic history to look at. Other nations across the globe that have had successful democracies, successful republics. We have hindsight of all of that history to look at. So the answer is yes, there are people working on it. There are people that have been working on it for 65 years, specifically in Canada with Quebec. And since 1990, there's 38 new nations that have been formed through democratic, 80% of them through democratic process. So we have all that history and all that learning, or all that knowledge to take from as well. Yeah. And Shane is back there doing either he's choking or I'm supposed to end the meeting.
I think he's choking.
I think it's storming out there, so.
It was the last question at the moment. I believe the Let's Talk Alberta has 3 pillars. One is family, the last one is faith. And I wanted to ask Trudeau about doing the prayer.
Thank you, Lord, for the freedom you give us on this land to speak freely. And I'm praying for protection of that free speech. I'm praying for a peaceful transition to whatever we need to transition to give a better future to our children. I'm praying for protection over everybody here on their way home and with that storm rolling in. And bless this evening. Bless everybody here. In the name of Jesus, I pray, amen.
So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for everybody who's watching online. Thank you. If you have more information, go to freedomcanada.net. There's also more information about Let's Talk Alberta. And we're really appreciate it. Have a good night.
And also, I will be tomorrow in Claresholm with the folks from EP. They're going to have John Carpe. He's going to talk about the bills from the Canadian government and the MOU. And Chris Sim will be speaking on the MOU and the pipeline, specifically in Claresholm at the Community Center 7. So, thanks a bunch.